This is your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask with your host, Dr. Judith Briles, on the Rockstar Radio Network. On the show today, you'll find out where book publishing is going and how to take advantage of it. How to identify and avoid publishing predators. What opportunities are emerging as the book trade evolves in new forms. How to avoid losing money, and much, much more. Join us now as a variety of publishing pros will deliver insights and strategies to take the author to the next level of publishing. It's your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. Brought to you by Author You and the Book Shepherd on the Rockstar Radio Network. And now, here's your host, Dr. Judith Briles.
Well, a fabulous fall day to all of you. We're broadcasting from Colorado, so we can see the leaf peepers are just starting to come out. We can see just the top of our trees with just a hint of color coming in. And what I love about today's show is that we're going to get into that hint of color. My guest today will be Harry MacLean, and what you might not know about Harry is that he is an amazing author. He's one of those attorneys who has that flair, the gift of the word, but who doesn't know that about attorneys? And he's been able to transform them into many best-selling writers. He is the winner of the Edgar Award for Best True Crime, and he was on the New York Times bestseller list for 3 months. And it was all about, this one book I'm talking about was a book called In Broad Daylight. And it's going to be a movie version. Actually, it debuted this summer and in broad daylight, and it was about a bully in a small town in the state of Missouri. So his next book was called Once Upon a Time, and it was another true story of memory, murder, and the law as the subtitle. And he really has learned the gift and been able to tell it so extraordinarily well of these true crimes. So one of the things that we really want to know is, how do authors pick these subjects? Because I will tell you, this is when I want downtime and I want to read something, I actually am a true crime reader. I don't have the gift to write it, but thank heavens that people like Harry MacLean do. So we're going to bring him on, and he's going to tell us some of the inside secrets of how he really pursues the topic, how he drills down into it, how he does the research, how he keeps his tush out of the ringer in case there's lawsuits, or maybe there's not. And we'll find out so much more on your guide to book publishing today. So, Harry, welcome to the show. We're so glad to have you.
Thank you, Judith. It's good to be with you.
So let's just really start off right at the top. How do you decide on what topics you're going to pursue?
Well, I think I'm very fortunate in the sense that I'm able to write only those subjects or books that personally interest me. As you said, I've got a legal background, and so they all kind of involve some sort of machination or some sort of functioning or malfunctioning of the criminal justice system. But it takes a story that's interesting, where the characters are interesting, and where there's some issue about how the law has gone wrong or failed, where there's been vigilante justice or misuse of evidence, some larger issue that impacts society. But there are a lot of people that have to write true crime books once a year, once every 2 years. And when I said I was fortunate, I mean I don't write as many books because I still do a little bit of law, but I wait until the topic comes along that really grabs me, and then I throw myself into it.
Well, in broad daylight, and the town took over, when you're researching or you're just kind of probing, how often does that kind of thing happen?
Does what sort of thing?
A town will take over. They'll become maybe the prosecutor.
Well, that was pretty rare. That's what made that story so interesting, is that it was happened in 1981. And I remember the day that I found out about it. I opened a Time magazine, and there was a story of a picture of Ken McElroy and a little headline saying that the town bully had been shot to death and that it was a matter of vigilante justice. And that of course rings true of the 1890s, not the 1980s in the Old West. So that grabbed my interest, and I got in a car and drove out there. And of course, the town was still protecting the killers, and they're still protecting them today. Although one of the killers is dead. But that's what made it so interesting, is that it was kind of 100 years late, and I wanted to know how the law failed, how it, what happened to the judges and the cops and the sheriffs and all the people that were supposed to be protecting this town. And on the whole bully thing, there are other bullies and there are other town bullies, but not like Ken McElroy.
And he was a bully with a capital B.
Yeah, I mean, he basically, for over 20 years, robbed, raped, burned, pillaged, assaulted, stole, committed crimes at will over a 6-state area, a 6-county area in northwest Missouri. And if he did get charged, he was acquitted, or the prosecutor would back off, or the witnesses would disappear, or the judges would excuse himself from hearing the case. And meanwhile, he's focusing on this little town and Skidmore and terrorizing them until they come to the realization that the entire criminal justice system is not functioning and that they're going to have to do something themselves.
Well, and I think that I have to say, as someone who has observed different kind of behaviors, or especially my expertise was dealing with workplace bullies, and not to the extent of what you were describing about your subject, but the reality is that there is a breaking point, and people finally do throw in the towel. Or in most cases, what happens in workplaces is people say, "The hell with it, I'm out of here," and this management system is absolutely inept and incompetent, and I want nothing to do with it.
Right.
And then they lose millions of dollars.
Yeah.
In cost and loss and all that. Well, how often, I mean, you said you opened up the Time magazine. And how often do you get your leads just by opening up the newspaper or seeing something online, hearing it on a news broadcast?
Well, the second book I wrote, Once Upon a Time, was the story about a woman who accused her father of murdering her best friend 20 years earlier, based solely on a repressed memory that she recovered of having witnessed the murder as a little girl. And that story, so he was tried for murder, tried and convicted of murder based solely on her repressed memory. That case came to me, I think, through my agent, read about it or saw her on TV. I think it was some news magazine did a little piece on her in the very early stages of the story, and that grabbed me because the notion of repressed memory, even back in 1992, was not accepted and fairly controversial. And here, this evidence was going to be used to charge and convict a man of murder, and it wasn't corroborated at all. So that one, I think I probably would have stumbled on it anyway, but that one was my agent calling me up and say, "Hey, you ought to check out this Franklin case in California."
Mm-hmm. Well, you bring up repressed memories because it was a lot of stuff came up from the repressed memory. Was that a fad, or that a lot of things occurred during that time, or was it really truly a trend, an unburied trend that people had to pay attention to? And I'm really asking from your experience as you dug into that, because I'm suspecting that you had to go down multiple avenues of the validity of repressed memories.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And in a larger sense, it was a pretty scary time when we look back on it now, because that was the late 80s, early 90s, when there was this kind of wave of hysteria about child abuse in daycare centers, and all sorts of charges were made, all sorts of people were convicted of things. And one of the things that was a part of that is adult women, primarily women, recovering memories of being sexually abused as children, normally by their father or by another adult male in the family. Mm-hmm. And a whole therapeutic community was built up around this notion that you could recover a repressed memory of some trauma as a child, and it went pretty much unchecked. The few psychologists or psychiatrists that had the courage to stand up and say, wait a minute, we don't know anything about repressed memories. We certainly don't have the science to support them as fact, were pilloried and almost driven out of their profession. And that period is over with. It lasted 5 or 6 years, but they kind of assumed...
Harry, you know what? We're at our break. We'll come right back, and we'll come back to it. I was so engrossed in your story, I wasn't paying attention. Whoops. This is Judith Briles. We'll be right back.
This is your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. With your host, Dr. Judith Briles. And we'll be right back with more great information right after these on the Rockstar Radio Network.
Is there a book in you or another? Author U will show you how to create, develop, and publish your book without being hoodwinked. If you already have a book out, you'll find a supportive and brainstorming community that's connected and creative no matter where you live. Author U brings in national experts for its book camps and annual author extravaganza held each May. It has regular meetings and delivers webinars for its members on timely topics. Through Author U's extensive network, members enjoy exclusive benefits, including significant discounts for a variety of services necessary to publishing. The Resource, its online book publishing news magazine, is content-heavy and it's free. If you want to create a book that has pizzazz, punch, and panache, Author U is for you. If you're a hobbyist or a casual author, it's not. Join Author U today through its website at authoru.org. Follow Author U on Twitter at AuthorU and on Facebook at Author U, where timely author and publishing tips and articles are posted daily. Author U, where the author goes to become seriously successful.
Change the way you publish online. WaveCloud is a new form for authors to manage all their books' information in one place from start to finish, including pricing and listing summary. To learn more or sign up for email updates, visit wavecloud.com.
Every picture tells a story. And it's a truism that people do judge a book by its cover. Nick Sellinger and NZ Graphics have been in the business of producing superior graphic cover design and interior layout for self-published authors, independent and traditional publishers for years. He has developed a reputation for excellent work, fast turnarounds, and best of all, affordable pricing. NZ Graphics also produces ebooks and book marketing materials such as posters, sell sheets, postcards, bookmarks, business cards, logos, and more. Books designed for his clients have won multiple book awards, including Best Book Award by U.S. Book News, multiple Evie Awards from the Colorado Independent Publishers Association, Indie Book Awards, the San Francisco Book Festival Award, and Freedom Medal Award from Valley Forge. Visit www.nzgraphics.com or call 303-985-4174 for more details about making your book the success it should be. Mention that you are an FOJ, friend of Judith's, and that you heard about NZ Graphics on your guide to book publishing.
Welcome back to your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask on the Rockstar Radio Network. If you want to write and publish a book, if you want to be successful as an author, your guide to book publishing, everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask, is for you. Stay tuned and you'll hear about statistics, scenarios, and strategies on what to do now to get you published. So let's get back to the show. And here again is your host, Dr. Judith Briles.
With us, we have Harry MacLean, who is the author of several best-selling books. He is the award-winning, recognized with the Edgar Award for the best true crime. And we're really kind of digging in a little bit of how he goes about and does some of the research that he is after and looking at. So I guess it probably begs, how long do you dive into a topic before, number one, Harry, you say, yeah, this is me, it's talking to me and I'm going for it. And then how much time do you spend really in the research of it?
I've usually got a pretty good sense about the topic when I get started. I suppose I could come to a dead end and have to turn back, but I very much believe that even in the this day of high technology and email and Google searches and so forth, that you have to get on the ground, that you have to get out to the place. Any story that interests me almost has to have an interesting sense of place and interesting characters to it, and you simply can't do that on a technological. You have to get out and knock on the doors and walk into the cafes and go into the courtrooms and hang out in the bars and get to know people and get them to trust you and get them to open up to you. So for me, it's still very much a personal experience. I think if you're doing more historical research, you wouldn't necessarily need that sort of an approach. But I want to feel the people. I want to feel the crime. I want to feel the place. Because I think only when I get that sort of personal involvement in it am I going to be able to describe it in a way that puts the reader there. And that takes a lot of time. I mean, the first book in Skidmore, Missouri was over 3 years. I was out there off and on 3 or 4 months at a time until I finally became a part of the community and lived with the family there. But I ended up doing a lot of things that weren't really investigative. I went to, I'd go to bake sales, I'd go to church, hang out at rodeos and so forth, mainly just to become a part of the scene and to get a feel for the place and the characters, and also to kind of get people to relax when I was around. The one in California about the repressed memory, that took a couple of years. Well, that was a trial book. We sat through the trial of the man that was accused of murdering this little girl 20 years earlier. And so the structure of that book is the trial.
Well, let me ask you about that, because I remember reading a lot in Vanity Fair, Dominic Dunn's articles, of some of the trials he would sat through. And, of course, the last, I think, really big one was the O.J. Simpson.
Right.
And following some of his articles. When you're sitting in a trial, I mean, how are you being swayed? Are you able to kind of just step away and I'm just taking down the facts, ma'am, type of thing? I mean, where are you when you're sitting there? What are you looking for? I
think, I sit there as a lawyer because I have that training, so I'm kind of looking at it through that perspective. What's going on technically here? Is this evidence going to get in? Should it get in? But a technical account of a trial won't be interesting. So you kind of have to open your observer's eyes and make it into a story. And a trial is a story. It's a classic drama. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It has main characters trying, all disagreeing and telling their stories and so forth. So if you tell it right, you can really make it into a great drama. But that means you also have to kind of personalize it. Like in the Franklin case in California, Eileen Franklin, the daughter that was accusing her father of murder, was an incredibly dramatic witness. She was very charismatic, very powerful, very beautiful, and the defense lawyer who was cross-examining her was himself very, very skilled. And the playoff of those two was fascinating. It was a great drama. So you had to be kind of accurate about what's going on, but you also had to catch the flair of the story.
When you're sitting in a trial, and number one, you've got your attorney hat on, but you've also got this observant hat on, and you've got the story unfolding on there, and I'm sure that there's a variety of twists and turns. Have you ever been kind of shell-shocked with some of the statements and then the outcome, and what's that do for your writing?
Well, part of it, yeah. I mean, you never know what's going to happen in a trial, and you never know what the witnesses are going to say. And no matter how well the lawyers prepare, there always are surprises, and there were great surprises in the Franklin case. And what would happen is, the minute we didn't know who the witnesses were going to be till they were called, and there were a lot of surprises to us, and us meaning the people that are watching the trial. And so the minute they were done testifying, we would go whipping out the courtroom doors and try and grab them for an interview or try and get their phone number and talk to them later. So you're kind of watching the story, but you're also kind of involved in the story, trying to track people down who have testified. And you're also trying to ingratiate yourself with the lawyers, and the clerks and the bailiffs and the stenographers, so they'll give you breaks and let you look at the evidence and maybe let you look at their files and so forth. So you never really know what's going to happen in a trial, which is kind of what makes it exciting.
And then how many trials have you sat through then?
2. The third book, The Past is Never Dead, was the trial of a Klansman in 2007 for the murder of 2 black youths in Mississippi in 1964. It was one of those stories of Mississippi trying to clean up its past by prosecuting Klansmen for murders in the 60s that they got away with for 25, 30 years. That trial was interesting because of the drama that was playing out there, the racial drama, the attempts of Mississippi to clean up its past, and not only that, it wasn't at all clear that he was guilty of murdering these 2 black youths. So that had drama and uncertainty and great kind of a cultural grip to it as well.
And then with that, because that was a fairly recent type of thing, that how did the local media? I mean, do you as someone who is writing on this, do you really grab up all the thing that's being written to just stockpile it so you can come back to look at it, or to see if they've got other sources, or to discount it, or what do you do?
Yeah, well, the first thing I do is check with everything that has been written or published. It's a little bit easier to do that now on the internet, but you have to I've always been able to make good contacts, good relationships with the local media, because they know the characters, they know the cops, they know where the files are, and sometimes they're a little jealous about you coming in and ripping off their story. But by and large, they kind of like being a part of it too. And I've always made allies with the local journalists to use their sources, and then they like to influence the story, and some of them have become good friends. But I'm sure you could do it without them, but they are on the inside, and they can arrange, they know if you want to go for a prison visit, they know the warden, they know the phone number, they might make a call for you. So they're actually very important people in the process of researching, absolutely.
So when you're doing your research, and of course you need to tap into the records, do you have kind of like a step 1, 2, 3 that you go through when you start putting together, you decide, okay, I'm going to do this story? As you're setting up your files and you're going through, and you have to go for records, are there specific steps that you would go through, or is it going to be different in every case?
Well, I'm not that well organized a person, and what I start off doing is just with a piece of paper, sitting down and writing down the name of every person that I can think of in the story that I would like to talk to, and then starting to talk to them, and you get those names from the newspaper articles, from the TV reports, or from the court records. And then with each interview, you hopefully get more names and more people, so that kind of keeps growing, and then you scratch people off. And at the same time, you are getting into the documents involved. It kind of depends on the story as to how much the documents are involved. In the Franklin case, there were in the in broad daylight case, there were a lot of documents because he had gotten rid of he had committed so many crimes for so many years that they were hidden away in courthouses all over.
So I guess I have to ask this number one question: how did they get hidden?
Well, they
Who
were
was
sealed.
protecting him?
They were sealed. When he was accused of rape, 13 counts of rape against a girl when she was 13 years old, and he ended up later marrying her. And the prosecutor or the judge decided that they didn't want the publicity, and they sealed the records.
There you go.
So you can turn around and sue him if you want, but it's going to take 2, 3, 4 years, even if you do succeed.
All right.
So
well, on
what
that,
you do
let's
is you
forget
try and go to another way. I went to his lawyer.
All right.
And
hold on to that thought, because
eventually
we're going to come into our bottom of the hour break. But let's find out how Harry goes to the lawyer, gets more information, and maybe we can get some things unsealed. Perfect for a true crime writer. I'm Judith Briles, and we'll be right back.
This is your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. With your host, Dr. Judith Briles. And we'll be right back with more great information right after these on the Rockstar Radio Network.
Since 1987, Color House Graphics has set the standard for quality book production. Whether you decide to print a small quantity of books or need a large print run, depend on Color House to help you. You'll receive professional help and advice the moment you reach one of our representatives. If you mention hearing about us on your guide to book publishing with Judith Briles, we will provide you a discount on the first order you place. To speak with a project manager, call us toll-free at 800-454-1916 or visit us at www.colorhousegraphics.com.
Do you need postcards that make a statement? How about business cards, flyers, brochures, or NCR forms? Tuvets is the solution for all your printing needs. Providing services specially designed for authors, we deliver exceptional quality colored printing. Most important of all, we specialize in reducing your printing costs. No more waiting. No more standing in lines at your local printer. Online proofing. With our pricing tools calculator, you can get instant quotes on all your printing products, as well as shipping rates all over the United States. Just a few clicks of the mouse and you're on the way to discovering how easy and convenient online color printing should be. Contact our friendly, human account representatives. We recognize that you want answers, not voice prompts. Visit our website at www.tu-vets.com or call 1-800-894-8977.
When Ned Thompson and Harry Shore started Thompson Shore in 1972, they believed employees with great character would make up the best company. They were right. They hired people who were not only experts in bookmaking, but who were obsessed with quality and delivering exceptional customer service. Almost 40 years later, Thompson Shore remains a 100% employee-owned company. Ned and Harry knew that successful customer projects are a direct result of empowered employees. We specialize in all books for large and small publishers. Creating beautiful and well-made books, we're dedicated to pleasing our customers by making the experience a good one from start to finish. The personal touch we have with our customers allows us to be innovative in solving their most difficult challenges. Our platform also ensures that we can remain flexible to meet our customers' unique needs and expectations. Our marketing kit can create buzz for your title, enhancing the promotion of your book during infancy. When you need to test the market to gauge your future sales, we can provide digitally printed books that will transition seamlessly into a larger offset run. From ebook to hard copy to delivery, our skillful customer service teams are at the ready to answer your most pressing question. At Thompson Shore, we know that making the highest quality books requires more than just best technologies. It requires superior customer service, professionalism to the trade, and commitment to environmental and social values. With these standards of excellence in place, you can be sure that we will always help you put your best book forward.
Welcome back to your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask on the Rockstar Radio Network. Coming up, you'll hear more about statistics, scenarios, and strategies on what to do now to get you published. So let's get back to the show. And here again is your host, Dr. Judith Briles.
At the bottom of every hour, we always have one of our sponsors, and one of our sponsors is authoru.org. It's a membership community that is designed for the author who really desires to be seriously successful. And if you're in the Colorado area, Colorado is the mothership. We do have a big event in May where there is a 3-day extravaganza, and people fly in from all over the country. Actually, we had 5 different countries represented last May. The dates for next year are May 2nd through 4th. And if you want to know what's going on in publishing, you'd want to go to that because Kevin Briarman, who happens to be the publisher of Publishers Weekly, the Bible in the publishing industry, will be the opening keynote. If you're in Colorado and if you want to know how to successfully book market, especially in the social media area, we have a special book camp called Book Marketing with a Twist. There will be really beginning as well, moving into advanced strategies of dealing with Twitter, all the inside strategies of how to market your book in the ebook format, whether it's Kindle, iPad, or the Nook area. We're going to have a special section dealing with the whole segment of mobile marketing. And then we have a segment focusing on book trailers and how to make them rock and roll. So a little bit of something for everyone. It's designed to take your book marketing as well as your book success to the next level. How do you get information? If you go to AuthorU, using the letter U, authoru.org, just click on October 6th on the right side, the book camp, and if you send me, Judith at Briles.com, a personal email, you'll just happen to get a special discount when you do arrive. So that's authoru.org. The date is October 6th. It is all day Saturday from 8:30 to 4:30 right in the Metro Denver area. All right, Harry, so we were talking about your research and how you got names that led to more names, and I suspect that some things are surprising, and you mentioned the sealed records, and we went to break at that time, so we wanted to come back to that, especially dealing with the situation in Missouri where you had someone who raped someone, 13 rapes, and ended up marrying.
It's kind of, you know, you're right. You never know what path is going to open up for you. So one of the problems with that is you really need to talk to everybody. Every name you get, you need to talk to them. But even though if the peripheral person, some of those people on the outside, what appears to be the outside, in fact, are on the inside, or they know somebody on the inside. So it's kind of like you have to get really almost hyper-neurotic about it and say, every name I get, every file I get, every phone number I get, every address I get, I'm going to track it down. And you kind of, one of the problems is you never know when you're done. You know, you have to kind of set an artificial line out there and say, okay, that's enough. But what happened on all of McElroy's criminal cases was really interesting. He, of course, was dead. He'd been shot to death. And I went to his lawyer, who was a Kansas City mob lawyer, and had gotten him off all these offenses over the years, and I knew he had the files, but I did not expect him to give them to me. It was almost kind of as an afterthought, and I went and talked to him. And I also had not talked to McElroy's wife, who was the one that he had raped when she was a child. And I could not find her. And so I went and talked to him, and the minute I sat down, I realized this is a trial lawyer with a trial lawyer's ego, and he knows I'm going to write a book, and he's going to want to be a star in it. And about an hour and a half into the conversation, he called in his secretary and said, Beth, this Harry here's writing a book on this story. I want you to give him that room over there and a copy machine and all Ken McElroy's files. And I was like stunned because it gave me all this information, dates, times, places, witnesses, transcripts. I mean, I got so anxious over, I kept thinking he was going to reverse himself when I'd sit in the room running this copy machine as fast as I can. About every half an hour, I'd take my copies out and stick them in the trunk of my car and then go back in again.
Wow. So did you ever talk to her?
I did. So we're sitting there, and he makes a judgment that I'm a decent guy, I guess, and he picks up the phone, he dials it, and he said, Trina, I have a fellow here who's writing a book, and I think you ought to talk to him. I think it'd be worth your while. And she was down in the Ozarks at the time. She had remarried. And I called her and set it up, went down and talked to her, and had an amazing 3-hour interview with her, because this time she's about 20 years old, 21 by now. And I wanted to see her perspective on everything. She's a key player in the whole thing, because by the end of the story, she's riding shotgun with Ken McElroy. She's a part of his reign of terror. And so, yeah, I was the only one that ever interviewed her, and it was a fantastic interview from an author's point of view. She just died about 5 or 6 months ago, a young death, but she did remarry and have additional children. She was a controversial character because she was so young when he got a hold of her, and yet she ended up participating in his reign of terror. So there's a lot of controversy about what sort of person she really was.
Well, it also, I mean, for some people can also take another area that there's a lot of data on young people or anybody who has been abused, that there is information that shows that they, in turn, become abusers.
Yeah, I mean, and her parents basically abandoned her to Ken McElroy. He burned their house down, and they fled. They took off for the Ozarks and left her to him, and nobody else came in and protected her. And
I have to go back and read in broad daylight.
Yeah.
We're with me. This is for this hour. Our guest is Harry MacLean, and he is a best-selling New York Times author. He has won multiple awards and recognition for his true crime writing. And we're talking about how do you put that together. So, Harry, what would be some of the advice that you would give to someone who is just going down this path of writing and really
writing a true story nonfiction narrative?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I guess that, the first thing would be that you have to open your mind up in the beginning, as broad as as wide open as you can get it, or you're going to miss things. As soon as you start to form a hypothesis about what happened, who's guilty, you're going to start narrowing your field down of investigation. Now, that's inevitable. It will happen, but you need to struggle against it and not become an ally of one side of the event or the other, and stay in neutral, or you'll miss people, you'll miss stories, you'll miss characters that could be more interesting. So really open up as wide as you can and stay as neutral as long as you can going into the story. And then, as I said earlier, follow up absolutely every lead that comes your way. I mean, I would sit down every night and make phone calls from 5 until 11, setting up interviews and driving all over everywhere, because you never know who's got and you never know who's going to cooperate with you either. Some of the people who have the least interest in cooperating with you, who really shouldn't cooperate with you in terms of their interests, they'll just, for some reason, they'll sit down and open their files and open their albums and give you pictures and tell you the whole story. So I'm going to run down every lead until I fall over, is another kind of aspect to it. And you can't help but start to find yourself being more sympathetic to one person or a side, but you need to learn to keep that to yourself too, because as soon as people spot that, it'll turn them off.
Years and years and years ago, I had dinner with Truman Capote, and that we were driving down. I lived in Northern California at the time, and we were driving, and I was driving, and he was in the passenger side, and he was the character of everything that you had seen and read about him, absolutely. And we were just driving down the peninsula from San Francisco down to where I live, and he was, all of a sudden, he just sat up, just erect, and he started recognizing everything in the area because he had done a lot of his research and interviewing from in cold blood because Harry's sister lived in San Carlos.
Right.
And it was fascinating what came out of his mouth. That must have been a real treat. No, that was a treat. It was a treat. All right, so when you're interviewing these people, do you carry a tape recorder with you?
I kind of do it. If I'm going up to the door cold, which is really the way I like to do it, they can hang up on you too easy or they cannot answer your email. If I'm going up to the door cold, I kind of judge who they are. If they're like kind of if they're a secondary participant in the story, I don't worry too much about it. But if they are a main character, say one of the victims of whoever it is you're going to write about, I tend to vary my approach. Often I'll put my notepad in my back pocket and walk up and start to introduce myself without them seeing the notepad, much less the tape recorder. I found that if I can get in the door, I'm fine. And it's really kind of gauging, saying what it is you're doing, and then reacting to them quickly as you see them shift for, against, or out of curiosity, then kind of varying, like in the...
Right. So when we come back to that, let's finish up that part about that interviewing, and then we'll talk about how do you protect yourself from being sued, as well as your research and your book. This is Judith Briles. You're listening to Your Guide to Book Publishing.
This is Your Guide to Book Publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. With your host, Dr. Judith Briles. And we'll be right back with more great information right after these on the Rockstar Radio Network.
Writing and reading are moving to the cloud. WaveCloud represents a whole new community for writers and readers to connect, communicate, evaluate, and share. Writers hone their craft and build their business. Readers build their favorites. Sign up for updates at wavecloud.com.
The book shepherding concept is simple. The publishing world is changing, and so must you. You need an experienced shepherd and a guide to partner with you as you create, strategize, develop, publish, and achieve your publishing goals. You can't do it alone without paying the price. You can spend your money creating a book that turns out to be so-so, or you can create a book that looks and feels classy, builds your brand, and is a financial success, a bestseller. It's your choice. You choose. You need the book shepherd. Publishing is riddled with obstacles, sometimes nightmares for the author. You don't need problems. You want solutions. Dr. Judith Briles will shepherd you through the maze and the chaos. At times, she's had to step in and rescue a book that has been sabotaged by a publisher or by a publishing service provider, or sometimes even the author themselves. Judith Briles is the book shepherd if you want to create a book with no regrets. Give her a call today, 303-885-2207. That's 303-885-2207, or email her at judith@briles.com. By the way, Briles is spelled B-R-I-L-E-S. Follow Judith on Twitter at My Book Shepherd and on Facebook at The Book Shepherd.
At Total Printing Systems, customer service is our priority. We are located in Southern Illinois. Our employees have an average of 18 years experience and know that customer relationships are important to our continued success. We have been a short-run book printer for nearly 40 years and always stay at the forefront of technology. Our niche is from 1 to 5,000 copies. Today, we offer digital, black and white, and 4-color high-speed inkjet printing, a cost-effective way to introduce color into your short-run titles. We, of course, offer traditional offset printing as well. Bindery is done in-house, from adhesive case binding to PUR perfect binding to mechanical binding of all types, including side sewing. We provide warehousing, kitting, distribution, inventory management, a new print-on-demand facility, streaming browser-based ebooks, and bookstore. Call us at 1-800-465-5200 for a quote on your next book project. You can also visit our website at www.tps1.com.
Welcome back to Your Guide to Book Publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask on the Rockstar Radio Network. If you want to write and publish a book, if you want to be successful as an author, Your guide to book publishing, everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask, is for you. Stay tuned and you'll hear about statistics, scenarios, and strategies on what to do now to get you published. So let's get back to the show. And here again is your host, Dr. Judith Briles.
Oh, we've got I love this story. I'm so involved in it. I'm not paying attention to my cues, so I apologize, everyone. With me is Harry MacLean. He is an author. He is a very successful writer. He also has a pedigree as a lawyer. His specialty is true crime, these true stories. He's a New York Times bestseller. And we're really talking about how he sets it up, several of the books he's involved with, and how he literally falls in the story. And I think, Harry, one of the conclusions that I've come to, that as you as the author, if you don't fall into the story and get really involved in it, and as you begin to create the words, how can the reader, not fall in either? I mean, you have to really be so engrossed, involved in it, to find it fascinating that your words are going to have to portray that, so you can rope in the reader to come along with you, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and that's the art. I mean, the fact gathering is fact gathering, and then the art comes in the presentation and the weaving of the plot and the painting of the scenes. But, there's another thing that goes on is you get affected by the story yourself. I think maybe I'll write a blog on this at some point. I've been thinking about it. What the impact, look what it did to Truman Capote, for example. He fell in love with Perry Smith.
Yeah.
And some people say, his biography says, had a sexual relationship with him in the cell in Garden City, Kansas. And then he had to sit through until these two guys were hung, and it basically destroyed him. I mean, you can make that case that it certainly was the last thing he ever wrote that ever amounted to anything. And the stories like the one in California, particularly where there was a lot of child sexual abuse, and I had to interview a lot of these people, it was toxic. It was a toxic story. And I lived in it for 2 or 3 years, and you get kind of toxic yourself. So that's kind of an interesting aspect to it, is to do what you're talking about, you have to get all the way into it and feel it. And then at some point you have to say, what do I need to do to protect myself from getting toxic myself?
That's a great question. So what does an author do to protect her and herself? How do they detox? in the
California case, in Once Upon a Time, I didn't realize how bad off I had gotten because it's a gradual process. But I came back and the book was finished, and the manuscript, because it continues while you're writing it, because you're reliving and recreating and refeeling everything. And once it was done, I sat there and I thought, man, something. So I took off for New Zealand, Australia, and Fiji for 3 months to get over it, and kind of get back down to earth. Now the Missouri thing is a little bit different. I'm still involved with those people. I go out there every year. I'm going out there in a couple of weeks because it's an ongoing story. I mean, the killers still aren't prosecuted, and I made a lot of friends there. I got involved in the story probably a little more than I would if I were to do it today. But as I was saying, as we were talking off the record, when I first went there for the first 6-9 months, nobody talked to me at all. I had doors slammed in my face. I had my tires cut in my car, sliced open, and I had a shotgun stuck in my neck at one point. I was told to get off the ranch and didn't move fast enough, and I got bit by a dog. So there are some perils out there, but that also is what made it into a great adventure, which that's kind of a final point I guess I would want to make, is that the whole thing can be a great adventure from start to beginning if you put yourself into it. If you kind of sit back like a chronicler and kind of just do a factual analysis of stuff, I don't think it'll be as exciting for you.
Mm-hmm. Well, that makes sense. Hey, Harry, have you ever been sued for any of your work?
No, I haven't. Most of the figures are public figures. The main figures in the story. So you've got a reduced liability there, but you also every publisher has a blanket libel policy, which covers you unless you've misled them about what the facts are in the story or, kept things back from them. But it's always a possibility. I mean, there are people in every book that I've written that, have a grievance against me. That's inevitable. You will make people unhappy. And who, what does it take? It takes $150 to file a lawsuit. But, it's not something that I worry about if I've taped what I can tape and done my facts and rechecked my facts and all that. The truth is basically a defense in almost all libel or slander cases. And so you just have to be real careful to document everything that you do.
As an author, have you ever, I've done a lot, I've done maybe 10,000 interviews, but I'm in safer territory. I'm doing nonfiction in that I'm dealing with, things that will involve around a storyline or how to correct behavior, or I'm giving real life stories and getting examples. And I've always given my people I've interviewed, not only do I get them to sign up, but I give the opportunity so they can see what I'm writing, because let's face it, we all have bad days, and we wish to God we hadn't said something the way we said it. Is this in your neck of the woods, when in the crime and you're interviewing, do you ever let people see what you're writing and going on, or do you just really keep that just all in your arena?
No, I've had two rules, and that is, one, I don't let them see, and two, I don't pay them. Now, I did pay Trina $250, the one we were talking about earlier. And that kind of violated my rule. But a lot of times people will say, can I read it? And, they're kind of caught up in the stories that they hear about people getting paid for interviews. And once you kind of go down that track, it's tricky business. And, no, I'm trying to think, I don't think I've ever let anybody read anything, because then you're kind of opening the door. If you let one person, you need to let everybody, and they are going to be surprised. You don't really tell somebody you're interviewing exactly what you're up to most of the time. You kind of put a face out there as to what it is you're doing, but you don't really tell them what. For example, I would tell people in Skidmore that I wasn't out to solve the murder. That's one of the first things I would say. I'm not out to identify the killers. And that was true. That wasn't the point of the book. But behind the scene, I'm also real curious. And if someone tells me who they think the killers are, or tell me what went on that day on the street, yeah, I'll write it down, and I might put it into the story, and they might not be aware that it's going to be in the story.
Okay. And then what could be that, so would you rather get them, you're setting up appointments, but you're also just ringing the doorbell and trying to catch them off guard. Do I understand that?
Yeah, it's more kind of like face-to-face. People have a harder time turning you down to your face. It's easy enough to slam down the receiver or not open an email, but if you're a human being there on their doorstep, and you present yourself reasonably well, the other thing I realized is that I think probably almost everybody in this world does not believe that they are listened to enough. And it's kind of manipulative in a way, but if you start to listen to people and they genuinely think you're listening, and you keep your own story to yourself, it's amazing what they'll say. They'll go on and on and on about stuff. And you kind of have to be very passive about it. You comment and nod your head and say, that's really interesting. And then I would always kind of leave them with another series of questions. I would say, it's getting kind of late. I don't want to take up any more of your time. Can I come back and see you again and finish this conversation? And then in the meantime, they would, if things have gone well, they would have thought of more things to talk about it, and maybe a third time, a fourth time, a fifth time, until you really get into the heart of their story.
It does. So, with what you're telling, we only have a few minutes left, but I have to ask you, with what you go through, and really you've got to hear some just god-awful stories, just horrendous stories. What do you do to take care of yourself during this?
Well, the worst stories I heard, like I said, were out in California with the child abuse, and the people reliving those things. If you if you stay too clinical about it, you won't feel it, and you won't be able to present. At least I won't be able to present it in a way that makes the reader feel what you want them to feel and see what you want them to see. But if you get too far into it, then you're going to be. I used to start. I would dream about stuff. It would get inside my head, and I would think about it all the time when I wasn't there. And the only thing I could do was just stay away from the story and come back to the normal world of Denver for a while until I kind of, cleared up, and then go back into it again. But I think you have to be willing to put yourself at a little bit of risk if you really want to get the real stuff about what happened.
Exactly. And then one quick question. We've got about 1 minute. Is your research protected that you go out and do yourself?
That's a good question, because in the second book there was going to be a retrial of the conviction, and I know both the defense lawyers and the police were going to come after my notes, and if there wasn't a retrial, it was dropped eventually, so we didn't find out. But there are what do they call them? Journalist shields or reporter shield laws in California. There's a weak one here. But basically, I wouldn't turn them over. I mean, if I got a subpoena, I just wouldn't honor it.
Oh, and there you go. All right, we're going to have you back. So with me is Harry MacLean, the author of many New York Times bestsellers. We're talking about true crime. This is Judith Briles. Thanks for listening to your guide to book publishing.
Thank you for being a part of Your Guide to Book Publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. With your host, Dr. Judith Briles.